Well, hello and welcome to the channel. I'm glad you could join me. My name's Johnny and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. And this is part 3 of our M31 U.S. Tank Recovery Vehicle by TAKOM. And it's in 1/35 scale. Now, this is going to be part 3 of our build series. So let's go ahead and jump into it here and see how far we get. So let's take a quick look at our instructions here. Let's see, we finished up in the last video in step 11, except for the really small stuff, and I think our false or fake gun tube. Now step 12 has some PE and our driver's visor and stuff that we will probably break off if we have any major issues and we have to handle the model a lot. So we're going to skip on over here to step 13. Now this is the engine deck, and as you can see, for this particular version there are some items that we need to trim off of the center panel for our engine deck, so we'll have to get all of that taken care of. And also we have more holes to drill for all the accessories that's on the M31. So step 13 also includes our rear fenders and exhaust. So to prepare the model for us to be putting those on, we're going to go ahead and remove our idlers in the rear here, and also those drive sprockets so they're not in our way. And then we can get started right on the fenders, and it's just a tab and slot arrangement, so a little bit of, to me, extra thin, and we can go ahead and put our fenders into place. Now you don't have to use a whole lot of, to me, extra thin, but I tend to use more than I need to. We don't want it squeezing out everywhere, so big thing here is to make sure that we've got the alignment correct. And that's why I'm choosing to do this now, is so that I'm not knocking it around later. We just go ahead and line those up. So with our exhaust, we have 2 muffler extensions that need to go on, and then our actual pipes. And these are keyed with kind of a half moon arrangement there. So we have 2 of these to put on. And of course I went ahead and cleaned everything up in advance so that you don't have to watch me cutting and filing and trimming. So, but they do clean up really easy. There's no issues there. Now one thing I will say about these exhaust tips is they don't lock in real positive, so you're going to have to use a little bit of cement to actually get them to grab hold there and stay in place. And once we get both of them glued in, we want to check our alignment there and get them as even as possible, and make sure that they're straight before they dry. So here we're going to be working on the actual engine deck. And what I've got is a permanent marker, a real fine tip type permanent marker. And I am marking all the items that we're going to have to trim off according to the instructions. This way, if it's been marked black, we could just go ahead and start trimming it off. So we only have one little item that is really prominent, so I'll just use my sprue cutters to get the bulk of that out of the way. And I'm also using a curved X-Acto blade to kind of trim up and get this down nice and flush. I tend to get a lot more control out of a curved blade because I can judge exactly where that contact point is of our blade to remove whatever it is that we want to trim off of there. It's much easier than trying to use a straight blade like a number 11 because you tend to cut into everything else around the item that you're trying to get rid of. So next up, we're going to do some drilling. We have quite a few holes here to drill. So what I've done is I've just laid it down next to the diagram, and I just circled every single hole that I want to drill out. Now, the part does have these extended ejector pin pieces, so I'm just snapping those off to get them out of the way. And then we can go ahead and just drill out all those holes that we've marked. And with all of our holes drilled out, I do go over it with a 600 grit sanding stick and make sure that we've polished everything down nice and smooth. Now there are two little holes that need to be filled that are molded in, and we just use the Perfect Plastic Putty for that. And if you've been watching this series, you know Perfect Plastic Putty is a water-soluble putty. We'll be using it again in this video too. So we've installed the center section. Well, actually not installed. It's just kind of laid up there. And we have these left and right cover plates that need to go on next. We're not going to glue this in place yet, though. What we're going to do is make sure that the fit is correct, or as best as we can get it. And I am going to take a little bit of Tamiya mask tape, and we're going to close up the gap for those left and right little side pieces there of the rear engine deck area, and that masking tape will keep it pulled up so that we don't have a gap between them, because these parts do have a tab where they interlock, and we really don't want a great big gap between them, so we want to unify this piece, make it into one. And so we're going to go ahead and just snug those parts up and tape it on both sides. And once we're satisfied with the fit, I'm just going to do the center section here with a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin. And remember now, Tamiya Extra Thin will wick along that joint, so don't use a whole lot of cement there. We don't want it to go up underneath the tape or to get into the rest of the vehicle. We don't want it cemented into place as of yet, because we still got a lot of work to do to this. And then we'll just go ahead and cement up the other side as well. And we need to make sure that we don't have any gaps and everything fits appropriately. Now, once our glue has dried sufficiently so that we don't have to worry about bending these parts out of shape and getting them out of alignment, we can go ahead and remove that deck, and then we can take this masking tape off as well. And what we're going to do next is going to go in and add Tamiya Extra Thin to the rest of that seam. That way we know that it's glued up or cemented together nice and solid. Now we can set this aside and let it dry while we work on the rest of the parts that need to go onto the deck. So we do have a Photoetch grill that goes onto our rear engine deck, so I'm going to use a piece of glass here to lay our Photoetch on. That way when we're cutting the fret, which has the little leader pieces that holds the part in place, we're not pressing down and bending up the part. Now these parts are very delicate and very thin. They got a lot of detail on them. They're really nice. So we don't want to bend them up by putting them on a soft mat or any soft surface to try to cut. And here I'm just going to use the rounded blade just to kind of snap those off. And it comes off really easy, as you can see there. And if you get it cut up close, you don't have to worry about cleanup. Now, since it is Photoetch, we're going to have to use some CA glue to attach it. And so we're just going to go in, put us a few dots of CA glue in the recess where the Photoetch part is going to sit. And once we're satisfied with the amount of glue that we have to hold it down, we can go ahead and install our Photoetch piece. Now, one side of it has much better etched details, so make sure that you don't put this part in upside down. That way the most detail is facing up. It's kind of easy to kind of get it reversed, and you just want to be sure that you don't do that. And then all we got to do is press it down onto the CA glue, and that'll hold the part in for us, just making sure that everything is nice and flush with that inner edge, because it's going to go right up against that bulkhead on the back of the upper hull, so we don't need any of that Photoetch sticking over. that would cause us some fitting issues that we really don't need. So going back to look at our instructions here, we have some brackets that we need to make up. We need to make 2 of those and some sort of rack of some kind. I don't know what that is for sure, but we have 2 of those to make up. And then we've got our fuel caps to go on as well. So it's so much easier to do that now than it would be on the vehicle. So we'll go ahead and get those parts put together. So the first part we're going to look at are these, some sort of a rack of some kind. I don't really know what it's for. But if you check the thickness of the 2 ends, and this is the piece that's inserted inside the frame, those correspond with the slots. There's a narrow slot and a deeper slot. I should say shallower and deeper. And that way you can't get the part backwards, otherwise it won't seat correctly. But even though it is installed correctly, it kind of protrudes down too far, and we kind of got a lip there. And I'm pretty sure this part is supposed to fit flush with the deck. So what we're going to do is just file or sand a little beveled edge where those parts interlock with one another. I think it's what I'm trying to say, so that it'll actually seat a little bit deeper. And then we'll go ahead and test fit it again. And it takes me a couple of tries before I get it right. But once we get it to fit flush, we're in good shape. And then we can go ahead and apply our cement to these. Now we do have 2 of these to make up, so we will have to fit both of them. So the next part that we need to make up is this one right here. Now these are the feet or pads for our A-frame setup if we're going to have supports that set out on the ground for our crane. And they go together fairly simple. I mean, you can misalign these vertical pieces with the holes in them. You just need to align it, and you know, it's not a positive fit. They do just go down inside the slot there, and once you get them in there, then you can kind of maneuver them a little bit and make sure that they are standing up truly vertical, and the space is equidistant. And since we have 2 of these, you got try to, as best you can, to make them both look alike. So here we're going to go ahead and fit these. I don't know what to call these. I don't know if they're like an adjustable ramp of some kind or what they are, but it's just part of the equipment that's on the vehicle. And we're just going to glue these in. Now, if you fit those opposite of one another, you get them switched, they won't line up with the holes that you've pre-drilled. So that's one way that you'll know that the part is not in the right spot. And as far as these feet go, I'm gluing mine down, which later on, come to find out that I shouldn't have done that, because they are supposed to be removable for putting the boom A-frame up. But that's okay. We can always scratch build a couple extra if we want to display it with those feet out. And we got a couple of little loops that also go on the back deck here. Well, not loops, but they're kind of an L bracket. And they just go positively into a hole that we drilled. You just want to make sure that you get them square and lined up on the deck. We don't want them kind of off at any odd angles here. Now it's always good to take a look at everything and make sure that it looks right and we don't have anything at an odd angle of some kind or another. So the next thing we're going to do is put on our I will call them fluid caps, because some of it's for fuel and some of it's for oil. And then also we have, depending upon the vehicle, it may be coolant as well. And we have two different types, so I think the best way to do it is just line them up right on our instructions, and then we can just put them into place. And they do press down kind of positively. There's a little bit of friction that holds them in nicely, as a matter of fact, once we get them in place. And once we got them lined up and in place, we can just hit them with a little bit of the Tamiya Extra Thin, and that'll secure them for us. And there we go. Now, I will say that that is really nice detail on those caps. Those caps look fantastic, so they should paint up really nice. Now, as I look at this, as you can see, these are really deep areas here for whatever these racks are on the back. And you can see that those are some really deep recesses. And then we've got our grill too, and we have that framework that's underneath that grill, which is going to be really hard for us to paint once it's on the vehicle, and especially once we get the toolboxes into place on this thing. So I think the best thing to do is to go ahead and we're going to prime this thing up before we actually install it. So I've already mixed up a little bit of our Vallejo black surface primer here, and this is a water-based acrylic paint, and we're going to prime up all those hard to get to areas. That way, you know, you get that false shadow thing if we kind of miss it with our primary color later on. And so here you can see we've got all that area down around where that grill goes, and then also our fill caps. I also did that rear bulkhead there in the fighting compartment because the fire handles that are on the left, they're guards, and also the viewport itself, those would be kind of really hard to get paint, especially with an airbrush up underneath them. So with all of our paint dry, we can go ahead and install our engine deck. And this does have the same beveled type joints that we had whenever we, in the last video when we built up the superstructure of our upper hull. In here, I'm just going to start at the very rear, and we're just going to glue it up and just run it on along. And the fit is really, really good. There is a couple of spots where there is a very small gap, but that's all right. We'll take care of that. So back to our instructions. We'll move on to step 14. And these are our toolboxes that goes onto the engine deck. And they are rather high. They're large boxes. So we're going to have to get those glued up and taken care of. As you can see, there are also the tools that go on them. I think we're going to leave those off for now. I haven't decided exactly how I want to treat that part of the build yet. Since those tools are kind of down inside there over the engine deck and really hard to get to, so it'd probably be easier to do that off the vehicle. And also we have to cut out a little section of that rail right there for the toolbox to fit for us. So we need to go ahead and take care of that as well. So the first thing we're going to do is put our boxes together. Now this is the really small, or the smaller of the three boxes, I should say. Now the fit is it's a little bit, I don't know what's the word to use, wonky maybe. As you can see there, it doesn't really want to align. You can just press it into place, and which is what I do, and put the glue on it, or I'm sorry, the cement, and put the cement on it, and let it tack up real good. So I do end up putting a clamp on it to hold this one into place. Now our two large boxes are made up of 3 pieces. And so we only have 2 sides that we need to put on. And once we get those sides put on, we can just set them aside and let them dry. There is a left and a right. So while our toolboxes are drying up, we're going to go back here to our perfect plastic putty. And any place where there's a little bitty gap between our plates, we're going to go ahead and fill those. And that's also going to include the superstructure that we assembled in the last video as well. So we're just going to do all of these seams that need attention all at the same time. Now when it comes to cleaning up the area around all of our filler here, our perfect plastic putty, since it is a water-based filler, I'm just going to use a cotton bud or Q-tip or earbud, whichever you prefer to call it, just to add water onto it. And I'm doing this after it has completely dried. And it doesn't take long since it's water-based. It dries really quick. And we're just softening up the surface area and wiping the excess off. And also using a toothpick or a cocktail stick, whichever you prefer, to clean it out of little grooves. So now we can go ahead and start working on putting our toolboxes on. And the first one I chose to put on is one that I thought might have an issue. And it did. Apparently, way back when, in the last video, we were supposed to cut all these rivets or screw heads off of that one little wing plate there on the side, which I neglected to do. I just didn't really pay any attention to it and didn't see it. So this is a good example of where if something doesn't really fit right, go back and look through your instructions and see if you missed something, which in this case I did. Also, just showing you that corner piece there that actually has to be removed for that rail as well in order to get that toolbox to sit right where it's supposed to. Now, with all that done, it fits really good, so we can go ahead and glue that into place. So other than the small toolbox, the other two fit just fine. They glue right down. There's no issues with those. And there wouldn't have been any issues with the small one either if I'd have paid closer attention. So next up, we're going to go ahead and stick our spare track racks. And these are just 2 little racks that hold 3 track shoes apiece. Those goes on the back of the large toolboxes. And we'll just put those into place. With our toolboxes done, we can go ahead to step 15, which is all this bracket and frame hardware here that's going to go onto the rear section here of our engine deck. So we need to make up all these pieces and assemble it before we can actually install it. So first up is our crane support. It does have a top piece that needs to be cemented into place. And this part, I guess, is for the shipping and movement of the vehicle with the crane in a stowed position. And once we got that cemented up, we'll just set that aside. So we have our main angle iron piece, I guess it is, that we're going to start putting our brackets on. So we have 2 small brackets that holds our boom support frame into place. So we're going to glue those up. And as you can see, this angled piece, the main body of the bracket, it has these indicators where these parts go. Just make sure you don't glue them backwards, especially these 2 that we're doing at the moment, because they do have holes that need to face one another. And once we're satisfied that they're nice and square and located correctly, we can go ahead and start working on these spare support rollers. So what we have is 3 spare support rollers that are going to be mounted onto that main frame section. And each one of them has 2 brackets that holds them into place. So what I've decided, they say make up 3 of these, and so we're going to make them up. At first I thought maybe I would just leave the rollers not cemented, but that proved to be a little bit more challenging. So it's just better to go ahead and glue these things together and then place them onto their mounting locations. So they each have these 2 little A-frame brackets that go on. So we are going to cement them into place, and then we also want to check their alignment and make sure that they're aligned with one another. That way this thing is going to sit correctly onto the main frame section. So here I've already attached one of the spare rollers, and I've decided just to start on the very end of this one face of that frame and start attaching the brackets. And there's a set of brackets that's going to go on each end of this to hold the shipper braces for the boom, the crane assembly. So they line up very easily. As you can see, there's just a raised section, and we just put these brackets on either side of it. The big thing is we want to make sure that we get them aligned properly and straight. That way they don't look funny, you know. If we get everything adjusted correctly when we assemble it, then it's kind of supposed to be a working part. That means we'd be able to actually put the braces into place here and pin them. Now when it comes to the spare support rollers, they just go onto those locator raised sections we see there on that main frame. There are no locator holes or detents or anything where it goes, so you just got to set it right onto the edges of it there, and we'll just glue them into place. So I found it easier just to glue one side of it, and then we can adjust and make sure that everything is level and correct first before gluing the other side of the legs. And then of course we had the other bracket that we put on the very end. And now it's time for our support just to be snapped into place, and that's the reason why I went ahead and glued those 2 bracket pieces in first. That way they would spring back together when I pressed this into place. And it actually works. So that's fantastic. Very nice. Okay, so now as you can see here, if we glue this into place now, there is going to be areas that are going to be totally impossible to actually get painted or painted very well, especially with trying to get in there with an airbrush. So we're going to do the same thing that we did on the engine deck. We're going to take and we're going to prime all this in the Vallejo black before we assemble it to the engine deck. Now once our paint is dry, we can go ahead and we can assemble it. There are 2 locator holes and 2 corresponding pins. Kind of helps us make sure that we get it right where it's supposed to go. And it's a very positive kind of alignment, so we don't have to worry about that. And we'll just hit it with a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin there and secure it into place. Well, all right, I guess that's going to have to wrap it up for this part. And as you can see, we've got our rear engine deck on with our toolboxes and our boom support for our crane, which actually works. And yeah, we also got the Photoetch grill on, and we painted everything up right there so that we won't have any problem with actually getting the paint down in there when we go to spray it. And as you can see, those angles are really, really difficult. So it's a good thing that we get all that in there. That way, if we miss something with our primary color, it'll provide a shadow for us, and it's going to look good. So, all right. So, special thanks to all my subscribers. It's because of you guys I keep making these videos. And if you're not a subscriber, I hope maybe today I earned your subscription. And if everybody enjoyed the video, please give a like. Kind of helps us with the YouTube algorithm and shows the video to more people. And that's your way of saying thanks. So, you guys stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.